Gilligan's Island is one of the most fondly remembered and iconic television sitcoms of the 1960s. The campy series featured a colorful cast of characters, including the likes of Gilligan, the Skipper, Thurston Howell III, Ginger Grant, and Mary Ann Summers. Actress Dawn Wells, who portrayed Mary Ann, gave her classic girl-next-door role precisely the right sprinkling of sweetness it needed to keep fans tuning in week after week to catch up with the ongoing exploits and hijinks of the survivors of the SS Minnow shipwreck. Wells remained a fan-favorite cast member throughout the series' 3-season run. After the show went off the air in 1967, she worked primarily in theater, appearing in over 60 productions, although she occasionally made cameo appearances in other shows, more often than not, reprising her role as Mary Ann. Sadly, Wells passed away on December 30th, 2020 at age 82. She was the second to last surviving Gilligan's Island cast member. The only remaining alum is 88-year-old Tina Louise, who played Ginger Grant. Facts First presents the sad reasons Dawn Wells died with no money and no family. She was an only child. Dawn Wells was born October 18, 1938 in Reno, Nevada. She grew up in that area and attended Reno High. Her parents, Evelyn and Joe, were always very supportive of her. Joe worked at a local shipping company called Wells Cargo, and Evelyn was a homemaker focused primarily on raising little Dawn. Wells didn't have siblings, but being the bubbly ball of joy she was, she had a lot of neighborhood friends. After graduating, she attended Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri, majoring in chemistry. Eventually, she transferred to the University of Washington in Seattle, where she wound up graduating with a degree in theater arts and design in 1960. After being crowned Miss Nevada in 1959, Wells represented her state in the 1960 Miss America pageant held in Atlantic City. Wells' Hollywood debut. Competing in that Miss America pageant helped Wells gain a bit of attention in Hollywood. She clearly had the right look to be a star, and since she had studied theater in college, she was a prime candidate to be cast in at least minor roles. She made her debut screen appearance on ABC's drama series The Roaring Twenties in 1960. In 1964, she was cast in her first big screen role, appearing in the John Rich-directed drama The New Interns. Those two early roles led Wells to land several minor parts in series like The Joey Bishop Show, Cheyenne, Maverick, and Bonanza. Throughout her TV career, Wells went on to guest star in dozens of other popular series like Wagon Train, Laramie, The FBI, Alf, and Roseanne. Her most notable role, however, was that of Mary Ann on Gilligan's Island. Gilligan didn't make her rich. Dawn Wells' signature role of Mary Ann came her way in 1964. She later revived the character for follow-up reunion specials and made for TV films like The Castaways on Gilligan's Island, Rescue from Gilligan's Island, and The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island. Gilligan's Island ran for 98 episodes, which is too shy of the traditional 100-episode threshold required for a series to enter syndication. Since this precedent had yet to be established, however, the series ended up in syndication anyway. And it's probably more popular today than it was during its first run. All of the other actors who signed contracts with Sherwood Schwartz and Company were only guaranteed a predetermined paycheck for each episode, plus residuals for the first 5 repeats of each episode. Considering the show wasn't taken all that seriously by CBS during the initial run, no one but the network and Schwartz really made any money off of it. The cast members weren't exactly fleeced or anything, but their salaries were far lower than you might expect. Today, it's commonly expected for actors in popular shows to essentially be set for life financially, but it wasn't like that in the mid-20th century. Fortunately, Dawn Wells' husband at the time, talent agent Larry Rawson, had the smarts to convince her to ask for an amendment to the residual clause in her contract that ensured she would continue to earn residual payments for all future reruns. The producers agreed, likely never thinking the show would become the behemoth it eventually became. Before you assume that Dawn Wells, with the help of Larry Rosen, ended up spending the rest of her life cashing in massive paychecks, it needs to be said she wound up seriously struggling with her finances in later years, regardless of Rosen's best effort. Health issues took a major toll. Wells was once quoted as saying her time playing Mary Ann was one of the most enjoyable experiences of her life. In a 2020 interview, she elaborated on why she felt Gilligan's Island was such a net positive experience. She pointed out how much she appreciated her character's moral compass. Wells especially appreciated how Marianne always stood up for herself and stuck to her guns. Instead of merely being eye candy, which she undoubtedly still was, she was also depicted as being strong, empowered, and reasonably intelligent. Wells also appreciated how clean, moralistic, and fair the show was compared to many of the offerings on the tube these days. Beyond those points, she further explained that her castmates all got along well, treated each other with respect, and looked out for each other. Despite these sentiments, Wells did run into significant financial problems in later years. Rosen and Wells's relationship eventually soured, and they were divorced in 1967. Dawn never remarried and didn't have any children. Because of this, she lacked familial support when her health began to decline. After suffering a fall in 2018, a GoFundMe was set up by Wells's hairstylist and friend Doug Kirkpatrick to help her cope with her financial ills. Even though she was the only Gilligan's cast member to receive long-term residuals, that money was still not enough to support her post-retirement. It's also worth noting that even though she did receive some cash in the years that ensued after Gilligan's cancellation, the majority of online reports on these payments have been greatly exaggerated. In fact, Snopes claims that the entire notion that she received even a dime is thoroughly false. However, there is some evidence that appears to suggest the opposite, but even so, it's not like she was swimming in coin. It's beautiful that Wells's fans were able to come out and support her during her time of need, especially since she didn't have a family to fall back on. But that still wasn't enough to keep her afloat. Living in Los Angeles is quite expensive. It's estimated by the end of her life, her net worth was less than $50,000. According to Wells's GoFundMe page, she needed $194,000 to alleviate penalties being demanded by the IRS. She also had suffered from a broken knee and required high-risk surgery. In 2018, she said, quote, "I thought I was taking all the proper steps to ensure my golden years, but now here I am, no family, no husband, no children, and no money." With no funds or assets to speak of, Wells was unable to move into an assisted living facility that she desperately needed. To make matters worse, in June of 2020, her longtime manager revealed via court documents that she was suffering from severe dementia. If it wasn't for the help of her fans and friends, who raised more than $200,000 to aid her, Wells would likely have ended up spending the remaining years of her life on the streets, broke, destitute, and utterly defeated. Tragically, Dawn's name ended up being added to the long list of victims who lost their lives to the COVID-19 pandemic, when she passed away at age 82 on December 30th, 2020. The week before she died, Wells had pre-recorded a Happy New Year video that was meant to be released on the holiday. Now it's time to hear from you. Did you know Dawn Wells was completely broke and suffering from dementia before dying of COVID in 2020? Let us know in the comments section below.